up, YouTubers? Rich from 2RC Productions here. And first off, I want to start off with a little announcement. We finally did get a winner for the dash cam Jeep. It took 4 times. The 4th guy, who is Frank Buck, finally contacted me at the end of the time limit to win the dash cam Jeep from New Bright. So I sent that out this week. I'm hoping he receives it today. It's Saturday the 20th. I'm hoping he receives it today. And so I'm glad that someone got it. He was really appreciative of it. He said he was going to enjoy it with his nephews. So that's pretty cool. So I wanted to get that out of the way. I talked about this before, but I thought it was amazing that people sign up for a giveaway. They're all hyped up on the giveaway, and then they don't even check in to see if they win. There was 3 people that could have won that lost it because they didn't check in. So anyway, moving on to the next thing. I want to talk a little bit about batteries today for the noob. For the noob getting into the hobby. I had talked with a gentleman, DRT is his name, I believe, on my, in fact, I'll check it out real quick just to make sure that I'm right. But anyway, he had contacted me about batteries and what exactly should he get, because he's been out of the hobby for many, many years, and he was looking to get an RC and wasn't sure on the battery type to get. Hold on a second. I should have checked this ahead of time, because I want to make sure when I'm referencing someone, I'm mentioning their name. DPT. D period P period T. So he's 44 years old, getting back into the hobby, ordered a Tamiya Hornet, and was asking me about batteries, what type to get, and so on. And I've had numerous people ask me questions about batteries. And the problem with RC, like anything else that you get into, is for the people that are into it and have been into it for a while and know all the facets of it and what you need, and if you build kits, you know what you need to buy and modifying. But for someone that's new to the hobby, it can be very, very intimidating and scary. So what I'm going to do today is kind of give you just a basic rundown on some batteries. And again, I'm talking about the noob, or anyone really that wants to learn a little information about batteries that doesn't know. And I'm not getting into the extreme technical side on what type of chemicals make up the batteries and, you know, all this type of stuff, and voltage and amperage, and I don't even know all that stuff. And to tell you the truth, it really makes no difference to me. The only thing that I need to know is which batteries are going to work well for me, what are their characteristics, and are they dangerous? And that's what I'm going to cover today. First off, what I have here for sample vehicle is the Tamiya Kumaman 1/10 scale kit from Tamiya. And this is a Rover body, which originally was on Sand Rover. They've had numerous renditions of this. This is a custom build that I did for my daughter Grace a few years ago, or a couple years ago. A lot of you have seen this before with the custom paint, and it's got LEDs and everything. But the only reason that I'm really showing this is I want to show you just a general 1/10 scale chassis. And what you'll run into when you buy vehicles, if you buy a completely ready to run vehicle, chances are it's going to come with a battery already. So we're kind of talking about buying a kit, or if maybe you bought something off eBay used and you're not sure, you know, what exactly you need to get. So kits do not come with batteries. This is a kit. And when you buy a kit, you can sometimes get lucky and come with an ESC. They'll come with a motor. They'll always come with a motor, but a lot of times the ESC is not included. What this kit came with was a standard can brushed 380 size motor. This is Grace's starter vehicle. 380 more than fast enough for a kid starting out, or even a bigger person that's never driven RC. You know, a lot of the mistakes are when people go to buy a new RC is they go into a hobby shop, and right away the hobby guy wants to sell them the fastest, best thing out there, or the people in their mind, they think that everything else is inferior and they need the 65+ mile an hour RC. And it's just not the case. You're going to spend way too much money right off the bat to get something that you don't even know if you're going to be. You know, you might buy an RC, drive it 3 or 4 times, and then say, this ain't really for me, and you get bored with it. So why spend all that money up front for something that you don't even know if you're going to be interested in? So I think that's a no-no right off the bat. I've made suggestions to people on which vehicles to buy and so on. And I do not discourage people from buying kits and attempting to build them, because kits are very, very rewarding. There's nothing like having a kit with a bunch of pieces and putting it together yourself, and then having that feeling of accomplishment and, you know, that you built it when you're driving it. It means way more than just buying something off the shelf in a ready to run package, plugging a battery in and going. It's always a little more difficult to understand the technical mechanical side of things, but if you take the time to study it and learn a little bit, you'll be way better off. So anyway, here is the kit, the Kumaman, and it has a hinge door where the battery would fit. And this particular car has a flat top, which is designed to take a racing pack, is what I call it. It's a 6-cell laid on their side in parallel. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 C-cell size batteries, like C's that you would buy for, you know, household items or whatever. Except these are rechargeable, and they're nickel metal hydride. That's what the NiMH stands for, nickel metal hydride, and that is the makeup of the battery. Do I know exactly what ratios and what type of chemicals and the reactions? No. Do I care? Absolutely not. Do I know if they're safe? Yes, I do. Nickel metal hydride batteries are very safe. They're stable. Back in the day when I started in Tamiya vehicles in the 80s, NiCad batteries were all the rage. That was all they had, was NiCad batteries. And now NiCad batteries seem very inferior, but back in the day they were very good and they worked well. We had 1200 milliamp batteries to start with in a hard case like this, and they had, it was a 6-cell battery, but they were laid like this direction, and then they had one up on top, and they called it a camel pack or a hump pack, and they would fit inside like the Hornet, the Grasshopper, the Frog. They made them so they would fit, and then later on down the line you could use a racing pack as well. Those also fit. They designed these batteries, and I remember Tamiya being the only battery out. And then after a while, I started seeing this style battery, but they were like generic. They had no name on them. They were just like yellow or blue, like this, where they had the shrink wrapping on it and no name. And those were the generic ones, and you could get them quite a bit cheaper than the Tamiya ones. So anyway, this car is designed to hold a 6-cell battery, and you pop it right in there. Now, this particular ESC is designed for brushed motors. Notice it has 2 wires coming off. An ESC with 2 wires coming off is a brushed setup. Now Tamiya does make other ESCs, and I will show you that because I like to be descriptive. And my Tamiya lunchbox has that ESC. So I'm going to move the Kumaman out of the way, and I'm going to bring my custom lunchbox into the picture. And a lot of you have seen this truck, or maybe you've never seen this truck, but I have a build series on this as well, along with the Kumaman. And this one here has a series of LEDs on it, custom pearl paint job, custom light bar, and just a fun truck. For those of you looking for a cool kit, you cannot go wrong with the lunchbox. It's just an awesome, fun truck for a very inexpensive price to start. I believe they go for like 104 bucks, which is awesome. Okay, so this one is the TBLE02S, I believe it is. What was it? This other one I can't... Oh yeah, it's the other one is the TEU105BK. So this is the brushless ready ESC. You can run brushed or brushless. It has the 3rd wire. Notice the 3rd wire, the orange wire there. You got the yellow and the blue and the orange. That's how you know that it's brushless set ready, or like this one says it on the top of it. And what it is they're set up for brush motors out of the box, because this vehicle comes with a brush motor. It comes with a standard like 27 turn Mabuchi 540 can brush motor. By can, they call it a can motor because the outer housing, it looks like a metal can, is basically what it is. It's a that's a standard end bell there. Some of them have the end bells that stick out. That would be the end. See how the face is, hopefully you can see that. The face of it is kind of flat. Anyway, this is a brushed setup, but capable of using a brushless motor, and that's a nice option if you decide that you want to go brushless. Now you can run brushless with a standard nickel metal hydride. But the hot setup, and a lot of RCers that are out there, I don't own any LiPos myself. I'm not a LiPo guy. Well, I shouldn't say that. I own LiPos in this form. This is a 1S, they call it, or a 1 cell. For some reason, LiPos, they call it 1S, 2S, 3S, and that is the amount of cells. So if you see a 3S battery, that means it's a 3-cell lithium polymer battery. These are LiPo batteries for my little flying machines, my little quadcopters and helicopters and stuff. These are 1 cell, okay? Obviously, if something goes wrong with this battery, you don't have as big of an issue. Obviously, it's going to smell, it's going to burn, it's going to start on fire, but you don't have as big of an issue as when you start getting into these larger cell packs. And what happens with lithium polymer batteries is they get a little bit of a bad rap, because if you have a charger malfunction, or you overcharge the battery, or you're hooking it up in the wrong configuration depending on your motor size and your ESC and everything else, and you create a lot of heat, they can start on fire and burn, and they've been known to burn houses down. And I had this conversation this week, and generally what is recommended is, if you're going to carry LiPo batteries, is you want to have, or the lithium ion too, these aren't as bad as the LiPos, and the lithium ion batteries are stable used in the proper way. So generally you would buy this, like this came with my new Bright X10 Frenzy, and this is designed for that car. So they have it figured out already for the motor, the ESC, the battery, the charger. It's all figured out. Where the problems I feel come in is when people start mix matching and wanting to get excessive speeds and bigger motors and more power, and anytime you start getting ridiculous amounts of amperage going in and heat, it's an appetite for disaster. Now, if you know what you're doing, and you're skilled and you have knowledge in that, that's great. A lot of people do it and they have no problems at all. So I'm basically, like I said, I'm gearing this towards the noob. So if I was going to direct anybody to go and buy a kit and buy batteries, I would recommend nickel metal hydride batteries. Now, there is still NiCads out there. You could buy them. I've seen Tower Hobbies has them still. I don't recommend NiCads because they have a terrible memory effect. So you see the Kumamon with the little flat pack sitting inside there? This is the only battery that will fit in this tray. Some RCs have a foam insert in the back that take up some of the space, and you can run a 6-cell or a 7-cell. This is a 7-cell pack, flat pack. So you have your 3 cells, and then they put one perpendicular to it on the end. And this gives you a lot more punch. If you can if you have a vehicle that has a configuration that allows you to run a 7-cell, most standard ESCs will let you run a 7-cell with no problem. When you start getting into lower turn motors, that's where you start having issues with ESCs not being substantial. So I could take this 7-cell, run it on any of these Tamayas, and have no issue whatsoever. We used to run 7-cells back in the day, in the 80s, but it was a 7-cell add-on. They had a 6-cell pack, and then they would have one cell wired in series with another connector, and you would just add it onto the battery after the fact. So you could run a 6-cell or you could run a 7-cell, depending on whatever you chose at that time. So I'm going to push the Kumamon off to the side. And we talked about LiPos a little bit. LiPos give you a tremendous amount of power. They have C ratings, which is the amount of punch, which is basically, picture yourself pouring liquid into a funnel. And as you're pouring, the funnel is tapered very narrow at the bottom. As your C rating gets bigger on a LiPo battery, picture the funnel being opened. So when you dump the liquid in there, it's coming out right away. Well, that's what's happening with a LiPo battery, the C rating, in layman's terms. I like to describe things so everybody can understand it without getting all hidden behind the technical side of everything. So anyway, the C rating is more punch. So picture your amperage coming out like a liquid form through a funnel in a fast fashion. The higher the C rating, the more amperage is getting out, the more punch. And you could see where that could be an issue if your motor and everything and your ESC is not matched properly. But we're not going to spend too much time on the LiPos. I wanted to discuss the lithium ion because this is the same type of case that a LiPo comes. This looks like a LiPo. It has the double lead, one to plug into the vehicle, one to plug into your balance charger. This is the way LiPos are set up as well. Putting that to the side. All these configurations, besides the one cell LiPos that I showed you, are nickel metal hydride. And they come in all different configurations and cell sizes. If you see, this is a little tiny 4-cell nickel metal hydride. This is what comes in the LoZ micro vehicles that have since gone away. You can't get these anymore. These aren't the ones like the new style, like the HPI Baja Q32 is a perfect example, where the battery is actually built in. I actually modded these out so I could put all, I could actually run these batteries in there. But for purposes of explanation, when you buy this car, the battery is built inside of it, and you can't take it out unless you dismantle the car. But it's not meant to do that. It's meant to be, when the battery wears out, it's a throwaway. The LoZ vehicles had the alternate or external battery that you could pull out, charge, replace. So basically this is a large scale RC in a small package. You can see all the components. It looks like a big RC but shrunk down. And the battery is the same but in a smaller package. Now, the other thing I want to cover with nickel metal hydride and NiCad, and I talked about it a little bit. NiCads have a terrible memory effect. And what a memory effect is, those of you who have had cell phones, you know, in the past might know this. Say you don't fully charge your battery when you first get it, and it has a half charge. You run it down, and then you put it on the charger for 20 minutes, you take it off. You put it on the charger for 20 minutes, you take it off, you run it. You're impatient, you put it on for 20 minutes, you take it off. That battery will start to form a memory. First of all, it will never let you get to the peak full amount of juice that the battery could hold. So figure these batteries like a fuel tank in your car when you go get gas in your car. NiCad batteries were notorious for so picture you're at the gas pump and you're filling your gas tank, and you know when you're filling your gas tank and it trips out when it's full, the trigger will boop and it'll stop when the thing's full. Well, picture your gas tank being half full and that thing keeps shutting off. And you think it's full, it's telling you it's full, but in reality it's not full. Well, that's what would happen with NiCads. You had to be very cautious when you first got them to discharge them all the way. And we used to have little adapters that were basically just resistors. I had one around here that I had from when I was a kid, but basically a resistor with 2 leads coming off into a Tamiya style plug. And when you ran the battery down after a run, you would stick that in there and it would heat up, and it would just basically draw all the juice out of the battery to get down to 0. Then when you went to start your charge cycle, you knew that these were completely empty, and when you filled them up, when you charged them all the way, they were completely full. And you would start off that way, and every time you would run the battery, you would do that. And that would give you the most life out of those batteries. Now, the beauty of the nickel metal hydride is, one, they came out with, you know, by the time we got to the nickel metal hydrides, the milliamp ratings were all over. I mean, you could just get 5,000, 5,500, 6,000. I mean, the milliamp ratings were all over the place. And what the milliamp rating is, you see on all these MAH, milliamp hour rating. And we don't need to get into that either and really discuss milliamp hour rating and what exactly that means. It doesn't really matter to the new buying a battery. What you need to know is, what is this 3,000? What is this 1,800? This is a 3,000. What does that mean? What are the differences in that number? What that number stands for, like this battery here, this is a Duratrax Onyx brand, very good brand. Anybody that's, you know, getting started and looking for a battery, I love these batteries. They work great. They're not that expensive. 3,000 is your milliamp rating. And see, it says 8.4 because a 6 cell is 7.2, and then you add another 6 to it. You got you add another cell to it. Now you're at 8.4, which is 7 cells, and that's what that's telling you. That's telling you your voltage output. So when this thing is charged up, that's the amount of voltage you're getting out of it to your car that's going into the ESC and being distributed to your motor. 8.4 volts. 3,000 milliamps, nickel metal hydride battery. 3,000 is your fuel tank. It's the size of your fuel tank. Like your car might have a 10-gallon tank or a 30-gallon tank. That's the difference. And what does that number do? It directly affects your runtime. So if you want to run long time. Like say you want to run a long time, you don't want to charge, you want to run a long time. You're going to want to get like a 5,000, 5,500. But I'm going to tell you why I don't recommend going that high with a nickel metal hydride. First off, if you have a vehicle like the Tamiya Kumaman with a 380 size motor, the 380 you can see is a lot smaller than the 540. And when you have to think about this all relative, how much are you drawing? How much does it take to actually drive the car? How much juice? Well, a 380 motor takes a lot less voltage to go its maximum speed than like a 540. A 380 is, you know, might do 12 miles an hour or something, 10, 12 miles an hour, where a 540 might get you 18 to 20 miles an hour. So it's taking a lot more power to get you that 18 to 20 miles an hour. So my point is, if you were to buy a 1800 milliamp battery like this, and an 1800 is a general between 1500 to 2000 is a good starter battery, and most ready to runs will include a size like this. This actually came from my ECX Torment 110 scale vehicle. This is the stock battery with the ECX connector. They call it EC3 connector that goes on there, and it's 1800 milliamp, which they're not going to give you the top of the line battery, but they're going to give you one that will work decent with their truck. If you were to use an 1800 milliamp battery in the Kumaman with the 380 size motor, you're going to get a long runtime out of this. You might get a half hour, 40 minutes out of it, no problem. Okay? The other thing that affects runtime is gearing. And I've talked about this. I have a video that gets into gearing very extensively. But what I'm going to do is just explain this to you really quick. If you have your transmission is stock, and it's the way the company, you know, built or gave you the option to build it, or a ready run is all set up, and you were to go in and change your gearing, I always recommend to change your pinion gear first. And the pinion gear is the gear that's attached to the motor that hooks up to the spur gear that's on the gearbox or transmission. And what happens is, the bigger the pinion gear, we're just going to talk about the pinion gear now because I don't want to get into a whole long thing of gearing. But say the larger diameter of the pinion gear, you will get higher top end. If you have a small pinion gear, you will get a higher speed or quicker acceleration from a dead stop. When you have a smaller pinion gear, your battery will last longer. And basically what it'll do is it'll get you out of the hole real fast, and then it'll plateau and you won't have real high top speed. When you put a bigger gear, the car is working harder to get up to that higher speed. You're going to drain more battery life. Okay, so using an 1800 milliamp pack with a 540, like in the Torment stock, will get you about a 15-minute runtime. Okay, and then you charge 1800, might take you 20-25 minutes at a 4 amp rate, maybe a half hour to charge up. And that's the other thing you have to think about. There's differences here. Everybody thinks that you got to have a giant battery, 5,000, I want the 6,000, I want the 8,000 million, I want the biggest battery you can get. Keep this in mind. The bigger the milliamps, and I'm talking about nickel metal hydride batteries here. Let's take out the LiPos, take out the lithium ion, let's get rid of NiCads. We're talking about this. These are the standard batteries that you're going to see in ready to runs. It's the alternate to the LiPo battery. They're very affordable. Battery like this costs maybe 20, 25 bucks. So they're very affordable. They're stable. You don't have to worry about them burning up and burning your house down and so on. So we're talking about this. If you have a milliamp rating of 3,000 milliamps, it is going to take a lot longer to charge than the 1800 speed pack, because again, it's like your fuel tank on your car. So if you have a charger that charges at a 4 amp standard rate, it is going to charge this battery a lot faster than it's going to charge this battery because of the size of the fuel tank. Now, keep that in mind when you're charging, because maybe 15 to 20 minutes is a great runtime, or a half hour is more than enough for you to run your car at one sitting. And then when you go to charge it, you don't have to wait as long to charge it. The 5,000 milliamp is great, but it's going to take a long time to charge. And the problem with a nickel metal hydride, and this is the big difference between a lithium ion battery, a LiPo, and a nickel metal hydride battery, is the nickel metal hydride battery will drain sitting on the shelf. The lithium ion battery and the LiPos will hold a charge for a long time. And it's very important with a LiPo, say, that you don't run down below a certain amount of voltage in the battery. If it was to drain down past a certain amount, the battery will be junk. It'll be junk. You'll have to throw it in the garbage. So they hold their life. You could leave them on the shelf and they hold their charge for months. But if you're not going to run it for in excess of 3, 4 months, 5 months, you need to check the charge rate on those. Now, nickel metal hydride batteries, I could charge this today, and tomorrow it'll already have a substantial drop-off in voltage. But the bonus of a nickel metal hydride is the memory effect is nothing like a NiCad battery. So they don't have that terrible memory effect. So what I do, what I recommend, and what I do with my batteries is every so often I will peak charge them, even if they're sitting. And then before a run, I always peak charge them before I take them out. So I would never charge this battery, let it sit on the shelf for 2 weeks, throw it in the car, take it out, and think I'm getting a full charge, because you're not. So I would charge this every so often to keep the cells in good condition so they're not sitting there on the shelf dry and drained down and not using, because when you don't cycle a battery and use it, it's like a car battery. It's going to go bad just from sitting. So every so often, I'll peak my batteries out, just even if I'm not using them. And before a run, always charge the battery to the full till it peaks. Then run it immediately, and you will notice a substantial difference in power. Because everything, you got your cells heated up, they're fully charged, it's ready to go, and you have no drop-off. So basically, guys, that's what I wanted to discuss today, was entry-level batteries, different configurations, different styles, what I recommend for the beginner, anybody looking for an additional battery to a ready-to-run or a kit, you know, battery for a kit. I recommend nickel metal hydride batteries. I would recommend 3,000 or below. I usually like to go generally 2,000, 2,500. 3,000 is about max, because you will notice when you charge at 3,000, it takes a long time. And sometimes I want to charge it up and get out there, and maybe 20 minutes is good enough runtime. The other thing I want you to understand, like I said, is it always take into consideration your configuration. If you are running a 380 motor, like you buy a new Grasshopper kit and it has a 380 motor, you can use this 1800 and you'll probably run for 35, 45, maybe an hour with this. And a lot of it has to do with the gearing. If you notice in crawler or trail vehicles, they run real slow, they creep along, they're very torquey. Those batteries, you know, I could put a 3,000 in my deadbolt and run for an hour and a half or whatever. I mean, they last a long time because of the gearing in the truck. So these are all things to consider. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to ask me. I don't mind answering questions. I like answering questions. I like people leaving comments. If you have any other questions or information or a specific vehicle that you may be purchasing and you're not sure what battery to get for it, generally, if you tell me the vehicle, I might already have it or have had it, or if I don't have the vehicle, I can look up the specs on it and tell you what would be a good recommendation battery, and generally maybe what runtime you might get out of that vehicle. So that's all I got for you this week, guys. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching. I want to mention a guy, Carolina Man. I don't know if he's on the car side. He's into Mustangs and that. And he does some like general videos and just kind of check-in stuff and talking with people, and he does giveaways and that. And the guy is really, really struggling. He's got a real lot of health problems going on right now. Check him out, YouTube channel, Carolina Man. He's just broke like 1,000 subs, so he's doing really well on his channel. He's got a Mustang, a V6 that he's been working on, but he's having some real bad health issues. So I wanted to mention him on the channel. Send your prayers out, thoughts out to Carolina Man and his family. Hoping you pull through all this, buddy, and get back out there and working on that car and running that car. So till next time, Rich from 2RC Productions here, signing out. Again, thanks a lot for all the support, and thanks for watching the video. We'll see you next time.